Say the Semantics, episode 273. It is September 16th, 2024. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday evening, afternoon. The weather is good. It's nice. It is just this kind of period, and I think I've said this, but I think there is still kind of an anticipation that there might be certain days, either in this month or maybe like in October or something like that, where there's just hot ass days for like whatever reason, right? But it feels like we've kind of come over the hump a little bit, and we're sort of fully entering into the fall season, which is really nice because I do consider it to be one of my favorite seasons. I like kind of the crisp air and everything. I do like wearing more layers. You know, in terms of fashion, I think wearing a sweater, I think bodes a little bit better for me than just like a t-shirt. Like I just, you know, I like during the summer and stuff, like I'm like, I don't know how to like I still haven't figured out how to like dress and shit. It's like, it's just not, I can't find like a fashionable summer attire. You know what I mean? Like for the fall, you can do a lot of things. You could do scarves, you can do gloves. So maybe it's not that cold, but you know, it's not to that point yet, but at least kind of like a, you know, other outerwear, and I think I can make it work. So that is sort of where I stand. I think that I on top of just the weather in general and just kind of the feel of it, I think I can do better with what's given to me during the fall versus the summer and the hotter weather. I just cannot handle. I'm just like, just t-shirt, shorts, you know. Maybe I could do jeans if I don't get too sweaty, but it just, I still don't like it. It's like cargo shorts and a shirt maybe or something like that. It's just like, it just doesn't, I don't really like how, it's not my favorite look. So, anyways, it's been a nice little weekend. I've been a quick little catch up. I've been kind of sleeping like ass recently. I've been sleeping kind of poorly. So it's just kind of the unfortunate sort of side effect, or effect rather, when it comes to during this period where, if I tend to kind of work late and stuff, I feel that I get my kind of sleep gets kind of thrown off a little bit. And I struggle to get into sort of a consistent kind of sleep schedule, you know what I mean? And then it's like some days, like on the weekends, I'm still kind of in the headspace of, you know, kind of anticipating work or whatever. And so I don't know, it's just difficult to kind of manage that. But yeah, it's just hard. So I'm kind of like, you know, while I am still kind of expected to be busy and whatnot, I think that I can try to get my sleep back in shape into a decent spot where it was before, where it was sort of like in an okay spot. But yeah, I did not sleep well last night, so I'm going to try to remedy that and kind of bounce off a little redemption going into the rest of this week. I've had a chance to play a little bit of Unicorn Overlord. I actually think that I'm like nearing the end of the game. I think that I'm really not that far off. I think like maybe with a few more play sessions, I might be able to wrap up the game. It's possible that I might make some progress later tonight if I have some time, because I did have a nice little session with it this weekend. I made some good progress, and I think that with just kind of the projection of the remaining kind of campaigns or the remaining kind of missions that are left in the in the game and as a part of the kind of the main sort of campaign, if you want to call it that. I mean, it really only is just the single stories. I don't know why I'm calling it that, but you know what I mean. And I think it's pretty close to wrapping up. So, and from what I've heard, I've done a little bit of just kind of looking around online, just regarding what other, additional content there may be out, post game content, whatever. And I think outside of just finishing up whatever other tasks that were already kind of introduced during the main story, I think that might be it, and I'm okay with that. I don't need every game to have post game content, and I think as time has gone on, it really depends on which games, of course, but I find myself not exactly caring too much about the post game stuff, because it's like once the story is complete, I just don't have the incentive to go back and do the extra stuff unless it's like compelling enough for me to go back and try it out. But yeah, for like instances of, other RPGs and that sort of thing, it's just like, I don't, if there's like the super boss, kind of example, if there is a super boss at the end of, after the credits roll, I just am not, it's cool for like a challenge, but I feel kind of satisfied when I beat the game fully, and I just don't really have, it just doesn't give me the same sense of, sense of enjoyment that I did have when just going through the rest of the main, thrust of the game. So I tend to kind of move on from those things. And I'm actually like, I think that it's nice knowing actually that you've done like the majority of the things that you are able that you are able to do in a game. That's like a nice feeling, it's just not like, you don't have to feel super hung up about it. You don't feel that there was, there's like some extra side content that adds, some additional context to a character or to the story. And I think with the case of Unicorn Overlord, it doesn't seem to be the case, which is nice. I kind of like that. It feels like it sounds like it's a very complete kind of package within itself. So, that's cool. And it sort of, I can kind of feel, good about kind of moving on to the next thing. Like, regardless of even if there was post-game stuff, I think that I think I would have been kind of ready to move on to the next thing. But yeah, I mean, overall, I've had a really great time, and I'm excited to kind of see it through and see if I'm able to kind of, see how well my strategy and my how well I've kind of raised my units, how that's going to kind of fare in the final section of the game. So yeah, should be a good time. Some other gaming stuff. There's my kind of, I think what's going to happen, and it's one of those things where it's really completely out of my control, obviously, but I do think it's funny that I am sort of like almost hanging on to a thread about whether the Switch 2 is going to be announced this week. There's been additional speculation as it has gone from last week to this week. There's sort of anticipation, and I think it would be really nice to see some kind of announcement this week. Obviously, the sooner the better, technically, just for everybody's, sakes of who have been, a lot of people have been waiting far longer than I have, you know what I mean? Some people have been waiting for 2 years because they thought that the Switch was, ready to kind of move on from that point, but it just continued to be successful. So I again, and I know that I've just kind of been repeating the same thoughts that I've had for the past couple of weeks, but my feeling, and it would be really nice again to see it this week, but my feeling is that it's not going to be revealed this month. it's possible that there's other things that kind of are going to be thrown into the mix. Like recently, they've announced like a couple of these kind of. I think today actually they announced a OLED console bundle with Mario Kart, of course, which I think is really funny. It's like how many. It couldn't have been some other game that could have been a part of that holiday bundle, like Mario Kart. Really, I actually don't have Mario Kart, but I've played enough of it with with my friends to kind of I think I'm okay with it until the next one gets announced for Switch 2. Then I think I will be probably on that. But it's like, couldn't it have been some other game? Maybe some other game, because a lot of people, if you are a Switch owner, it is more likely than not. Actually, I don't know if that's true necessarily, but it is highly likely that you do already own Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So I just, it kind of feels weird. I feel like another game would maybe incentivize people to get kind of the upgraded, OLED version of the Switch. Maybe a game, maybe like Tears of the Kingdom or something. I don't know. Bring it back into the fold. Try, do kind of like a 1-year anniversary OLED edition. I mean, that's going to sell like immediately, right? So I don't know. I feel there's going to be, I feel there should have been maybe a little bit more thought put into it, about like what kind of game is going to be bundled in this package, because it's like Mario Kart 8, it just feels so like safe, but also not really anything at all, because it's been done already. But yeah, I don't know. Is that enough of an indication that the Switch 2 release is going to happen, announcement's going to happen this month? I don't know. I think that there's going to be more things. I think more things will definitely pop up this month, but I don't know if it's going to be Switch 2 related. There's obviously going to be, a bit of a push for Zelda Echoes of Wisdom coming out in, a couple weeks, which is crazy to think. And I think there's going to be, once like the review embargo kind of lifts and everything, we'll see. I mean, obviously, my anticipation that it's going to be, very successful and whatnot. But I think that once that kind of, the review cycle, the release of the Echoes of Wisdom, and I think after that, I think like in October, because really in October we just have, Mario and Luigi, which is still, I think, is like a, pretty sizable game, and could be a decent sort of marketing push for them, that they could make in October. But I outside of that, I feel like that's like a good time frame. And then you got kind of like the holiday release cycle, the final kind of bastion, the final period for the the original Switch, and then going into next year, in anticipation for the Switch 2. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot to speculate for sure. There's a lot to kind of think about in terms of what what the strategy is going to be. Is like whether is it more, considering there have been other there's been news and kind of rumors and stuff that feels a lot more tangible than not recently, in regards to production, manufacturing of parts and whatnot, that you can kind of put some of you can put a little bit of faith into, because that feels a lot more reasonable than just some person on Twitter or whatever just saying something. But yeah, I don't know. It's sort of interesting. I do, obviously I am kind of with a lot of other people and fans of wanting to see an announcement made earlier rather than later. And I totally get it. I totally get wanting to see that. I'm in that boat. I feel like I've been waiting for a bit, even though it's probably hasn't been that long. I think it's been about like a year or so since those kinds of since myself personally have become a bit more interested in just kind of the release cycle itself. But because I mean, I think if I do think about it in terms of like the conversation or discussions that I was kind of having, I was thinking more about like, I mean, I was thinking about what the release would look like last year, because I think I was expecting it to come out, this year in 2024, but that obviously didn't happen. So, but I've been, I've been a part of the cycle for a little bit now, and I think we're sort of ready to see what's next, and hopefully, knock on wood and everything, that we do see it sooner rather than later. This month, next month, whatever works in that case. Anyways, we'll see kind of what, we'll just see what kind of moves are being made. It is like a very interesting time right now, just sort of like waiting to see what's going to happen. Like that's literally what most people are doing. We're just waiting to see. It will be funny though, like after I finish recording this, and like if an announcement does get made this week, like tomorrow or some shit, I'm going to talk about it. Of course I'm going to talk about it. That's just kind of inevitable, but maybe that might just like put out some energy out there that it will finally get announced, and we can just kind of move on, and then we can kind of be excited about what the future is going to hold, and what kind of games we might expect and that kind of thing. But until then, just hold steady. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. There Echoes of Wisdom coming out at the end of the month. Part of me, and I know I'm just like, part of me is just being impatient. You know what I mean? Part of me wants to pick up Link's Awakening, the remake for the Switch. I mean, I've seen footage of it. I've never played it before, and I just am kind of like, I'm craving that 2D Zelda. But I also don't want to kind of feel like, what is it? I don't want to feel as though I'm kind of doing too much, if that makes sense. It's like, one thing that I do maybe regret doing last year is playing Breath of the Wild before playing Tears of the Kingdom. Part of me kind of regrets it a little bit, because I think that some of that experience did kind of carry over to Tears of the Kingdom, where I was kind of trying to do sort of different things, and there were landmarks that I clearly recognized with the map and whatnot, and it may have been sort of like, doubling up on it. Maybe I could have like held off on playing Breath of the Wild at all, you know what I mean? But it is what it is. I did that. So I don't want to, with kind of the art style, and I know the gameplay is most likely going to be a little different when you're controlling Zelda and whatnot, but just the style of it, I do want to kind of maybe just sort of hold myself and be a little bit more just disciplined. One, because I feel that I have been buying a good chunk of games recently, and two, I don't want to kind of, I don't think, I keep thinking of burning myself out, but that's not it at all. That's not the right word, but just maybe like replicating the same experience from Link's Awakening to Echoes of Wisdom, even though I know that they will be different games, but I just am kind of craving that 2D Zelda. I said last week I've been wanting to, part of me has kind of been wanting to play Link Between Worlds again. And honestly, I think I might just do it. I've been really just wanting to play that style of Zelda game, and I know that I do want to play. I eventually will play Link's Awakening, but it's like, do I want to hold off? I don't think I'm gonna buy it, because like by the time I don't think I'm gonna beat it, by the time Echoes of Wisdom comes around. So it's just kind of like, you know what, let's just wait a little bit. If I am really craving more 2D Zelda, then I may pick it up afterwards. But yeah, it's a good feeling to really want to kind of get into it again. Really, if all else fails, I just play Link's Awaken or Link Between Worlds. Since I do have that on my 3DS, like, dust that off. I haven't touched that in a while, and yeah, play some of that. I do have some 3DS game pickups. Maybe play a little bit of Pocket Jockey. They did release that for the Switch as well, but I have not. Part of me wants to pick it up again. It looks like there are some differences with the gameplay from the DS version, or I guess like kind of the mobile version versus the Switch version. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of am. That could just be like another card game on my list of many card games that I already play. But I'm also worried that I might get like really addicted to it, like I did with Balatro. And I do not need that right now. I do not need to be addicted to a game right now. But yeah, I'm just thinking about just thinking about kind of what just kind of the feeling of kind of filling that void before getting into the new Zelda. But I think I just have to be patient a little bit, Don't indulge so much. And I know it's there, it's available. I can just buy it and stuff, but I just need to have a bit more self-control. Because I've already bought like a good amount of games this year, and I think it's worth just like, and I am going to buy more games later this year, the ones that I already know that I'm going to purchase. So just slow down a little bit and just be patient, you know what I mean? Just like think about when you're a kid, like you really you, at least myself, like I did not, I played like 2 games, not even 2, like maybe like 1 game a year. And that was like the only game that I played for the entire year. And now it's like I'm happy to do this because I really enjoy it, and it's like my passion and whatnot. But it's just different, and I think it's worth being a little bit more patient once in a while. There's some other interesting news. Let's step aside from gaming a little bit, because I anticipate there might be some stuff that comes up. But so I think the last time I kind of talked about space stuff was when the James Webb Telescope was successfully launched and all that. That was a while back, though. I think that was like a couple years, 2 years ago. And since then, I know there's been a lot of developments being done in terms of the our understanding of the universe, what the telescope has kind of discovered about black holes and black matter, and the beginning of the universe, and how the Big Bang was potentially not the start of our universe, and how looking at the stars from the furthest distant stars, from like the earliest galaxies and whatnot, that our universe might predate further back than what we initially thought. So that's all very fascinating and whatnot. I think for casual casual space fans like myself, I think the things that are the most interesting are, of course, regarding other life out in the universe. Just knowing that there are these different life forms outside of our own, just having, honestly, just having some kind of confirmation that another life form exists out there, I think is really the thing that I'm kind of holding on to. It's like we just need a little bit, and I think we can kind of work off of that, and we can kind of extrapolate that onto other things, because I really feel that there is life outside of this planet. There is that I just it's just probable. It is far more probable than there not being life at all. Period. We just don't have. We have. There is a unimaginable amount of space out there, and planets and stars. It is. I almost think it's impossible. It's improbable, rather, that there isn't life out there. So I think we just need like a little indication. Just give us like some kind of little weird wiggly thing, like a little fish creature that we can find in our galaxy. And I think that would be enough to be like, to satiate our kind of understanding and kind of our wants and that sort of thing. So anyways, there is a new mission that has been announced, and this is for the Europa Clipper. It's been, I think it's just been more approved, rather. I think they've been talking about this for a long time, but the news about this kind of started to circulate earlier, maybe like a few days ago. But the Europa Clipper trip has been sort of approved by NASA, and that's going to launch, I think, next month. So basically, this trip, it's a probe that's being sent out to Europa, which is one of Jupiter's moons, and they're going to be observing kind of the elements of water, because there's kind of it's sort of known, or I guess it's been known, that Europa has a kind of a underwater, underneath the icy crust of the surface, there is kind of this ocean underneath. And based on kind of the observations that are going to be done by this probe, it will kind of determine whether it is feasible for that to have life. And I think that is incredibly exciting, and I think that's really cool. Not only is it just cool to see another trip being, another mission being made, it's being made where this could really be like super important and super like substantial. Just knowing that there is life within our own kind of solar system. And I think that's really cool. And I've always thought that Europa was such like a cool, it is such like a cool thing. It's not a planet, but it could house life, some kind of life form that lives underneath the icy crust. I think that's really cool to think about. I'm very interested, and I think the Clipper is gonna make it to Europa by 2030, which is like, okay, that's a little while. That is a little while, and I know people cannot really sort of fathom the amount of time that it takes for certain things to get to a spot. But that's not, for me, I'm going to be like in my early 30s when that does get there. I'm I should be here. I should still be here. So that's cool. That's something to kind of look forward to later, a little later in life. So that's really exciting. I think if I'm like sort of in that period of my life, and I'm still interested in space. I mean, I should be. Why wouldn't I be? It would be really cool to get some kind of confirmation that life exists in our solar system, even if it's not like humanoid life or aliens or whatever. Some kind of life outside of our planet, I think, is pretty sweet. So I'm looking forward to that, and just the fact that I've been, alive during the period where there has been these like significant sort of discoveries and updated sort of studies regarding the universe as a whole, and just all of these really cool missions that have been done, and just being kind of alive during that period is cool. Is really um is neat, if you want to put it that. It's a neat thing, and it's like, listen, I can complain all I want about the Switch 2, bringing it back, but sometimes there's even more things that you can be excited for even further down the line, in terms of like human discovery and all that. So hopefully that gives a little bit of kind of excitement for others as well. I think a lot of people in the science community are really excited about that. Definitely those that are a lot more involved in astronomy and that sort of thing. But just like other people like me, just casuals, just just the regular folk who know nothing about space and engineering and astrophysics and any of that stuff. Just like being like, okay, this is like a very cool thing, and I think it's something that could be worth looking forward to. So yeah, that was kind of like a nice little news thing that kind of popped up. Obviously, there's a lot of shit happens in the world, and I think it's worth having kind of these little, exciting moments here and there pop up. Anyways, yeah, really this week it's just like, oh man, there's just so much speculation and all that, and if it does happen, I will talk about it. I might be saying this for the next few few episodes, but yeah, I was gonna talk about, speaking of space, it got me kind of thinking about Outer Wilds and how I feel about that game. How in some instances I feel that it is maybe a bit of a disappointment. And I kind of want to save that conversation when I kind of gather my thoughts a little bit more. I haven't beat the game yet, for one. So maybe I might, maybe I'll play that game, get back into it and complete it. But it's kind of making me think about games, sort of maybe continuing the conversation from last week regarding how people's reactions to Tears of the Kingdom maybe changed over time, and how that was considered a disappointment to a good amount of people, and what I consider to be a disappointment in from the games that I have played. And I think Outer Wilds might kind of fit that bill. That isn't to say that it's not a bad game by any means, but I think some of the expectation that was placed by other people may have sort of inflated my my initial kind of view and again, expectation for this game, and it might not have reached that level that I sort of was kind of going for. So I do want to talk about that, but I'm going to put a pin in it, because I do think that it is worthwhile to beat the game first and talk about that. So I'll either talk about it this week, or I'll save it for a future time, when I do eventually beat it. But yeah, I'm gonna hold off on anything else for the time being, and yeah, I'll catch up later this week. We'll see when. Alrighty, recording this on a Friday evening, a little later in the day. Recording this, it's getting, darker little by little, the earlier it gets. But the weather's good. The weather's kind of nice. Apparently it is going to get hot next week, though. Next, Monday and Tuesday, which sucks. But it was expected, slightly. Part of me was thinking that there was the possibility that there were still going to be hot days ahead of us, and I think that part of me was correct in saying that. It just happens, man. Just September's usually just have these kinds of days where it just reminds you of the summer. Technically, if you look at it, we are still technically in summer, but should really be transitioning into the fall now. So I would really like it if this cooler weather maintained, and then also for this helicopter to kind of pass by ahead, because it is very loud. A little correction: it is not a helicopter, but it is a small aircraft, a very small aircraft passing by, maybe a 2-person aircraft passing by, but very loud. Very loud. This week has been both eventful and not eventful. I'll kind of explain what I mean by that, but essentially there was a pretty significant leak that happened earlier this week, which seems to be very substantial. It seems to be corroborated by a lot of people, and it seems to be pretty legitimate for the most part. Essentially, the Switch 2 prototype model, likely from a kind of a Chinese factory worker, leaked that information on, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was Tuesday when that happened. And there was kind of a pretty big kind of uproar about it. And really what the takeaway is, and I am not at all someone who is well versed in any technicalities or just the technology side of things. It's just like, oh, new thing does thing better in my head. That is kind of the that's kind of what I understand. But just on a surface, the really the main things that stood out, the screen is bigger, and the overall Switch unit is going to be bigger. When it is docked, it's I think an inch or so bigger. It is larger, obviously, than the original Switch model, and it is bigger than also the Steam Deck, which is pretty, which it sounds pretty significant, because the Steam Deck, from my understanding, is a pretty big, is a pretty big handheld device. So that's going to be interesting. Obviously when I get my hands on the actual thing, I'll see how I feel about it. The Joy-Cons, instead of kind of clicking on as they do with the current Switch model, there's magnetics attached, which is pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. It makes it feel a bit more tangible. It feels a bit more less cheap in some ways. The Switch, I've never really had too many issues with the sliding on of the Joy-Con onto the handheld model. But I've had some, I've definitely ran into some issues. It really just kind of comes down to the Joy-Con itself, having a lot of issues, feeling kind of cheap in some ways. Not that obviously the Joy-Con drift is a huge issue. Just kind of the some of the buttons not working out properly. I've had to change my Joy-Cons quite a few times, and sort of that almost what it feels like, kind of planned obsolescence of these Joy-Cons for you to continue to buy them kind of sucks. That's one of my biggest complaints with the Switch, despite it being one of my favorite, video game systems. I think that the way they sort of engineered it and the way they just the way they were made, and the fact that there were no real significant improvements made over the course of its lifetime, and the fact that I essentially had to resort to either myself fixing the Joy-Con itself, which came with mixed results, or having to just flat out buy a new one, which honestly I kind of opted out because I really dislike finagling with the system. There's a lot of, there's a lot of really small screwdrivers and kind of circuits that you have to be careful of. And I'm just not someone who's really good at hands-on stuff, and I would much rather have either someone else fix it, or just buy a new one, which happened a few times. And it sucks though. It's annoying that has to be the case. So, you kind of want these things to be more or less like foolproof, or at least like reasonably functionable enough to where you don't have to just like replace it every like year or something like that. That's kind of what it felt like, until one of these become like defunct sooner rather or later. So kind of the original model, I don't know if that kind of functionality improved with the OLED model. I have no idea. I think the OLED really was much more just on the side of like fidelity and graphical capability, less so than improvements with the controllers. But yeah, that's just kind of my understanding of it. And so hopefully with kind of the way it's being set up, and obviously with the details that they have provided, kind of outside of the size of the controllers and the system increasing, and then also the kind of like the magnetic side of things, on the controller, kind of factor, if you want to call it that. They really haven't revealed. I mean, there hasn't really been too much of an indication that it's too much of a change, but obviously we'll see once the final reveal is made. Hopefully soon. We'll see. I'm leaning. I think just with kind of the timing of everything, it feels like maybe the reveal is going to be saved for next month. That's just kind of my indication. Just kind of my inclination, just because it's been too much time already, in between the direct from the partner and indie showcase in August to now, and it would be consistent, I think, for there to be a reveal in October, similar to when there was a reveal in October of 2016, I think. So I think that there are a lot of things to kind of consider, but I still think it would be cool to see it come out this month. There aren't really too many days left, or too many weeks left, but yeah, I'm sort of leaning towards October. I'm sorry to those that are kind of like part of the September gang, as they're calling it, of wanting to see a reveal this month. And you know what? I'm really hoping that luck is on your side. But I think that reasonably, it just looking at the trajectory of things, it seems like October is more likely. Anyways, it was like a pretty. I mean, that was probably the most like substantial thing that has come out about Switch 2, outside of kind of the conversations that were being had earlier this year in regards to the system being shown off at, I think it wasn't PAX, I forgot where it was, Gamescom? No, I don't remember. It was one of those conventions, and developers were being shown the system, allegedly. And so outside of that, it's been pretty, it's been slim pickings, if you want to call it that, outside of a few rumors here and there. But to kind of see like an actual prototype of the system is like encouraging. I think some people kind of fall in line with maybe being disappointed of seeing a leak of the system, maybe potentially being, quote unquote spoiled because they wanted to feel just maybe a bit more surprised when the model comes out. But if it is, if it is slated to be called the Switch 2, my expectation is that it's not going to be all that different from what it is right now, and that's fine. I'm obviously happy about that. That's kind of what I think most of us want, but I do understand where some of those people are coming from. But also, it's not the same thing as it was when the original Switch was being revealed, from my understanding, because that was a pretty big jump from going from the Wii U to the Switch. Obviously, some things with the Wii U did carry over, including kind of the the controller, but that being essentially you being able to have it handheld, and then being able to switch to dock, obviously. But really, it doesn't seem like there's going to be anything super wonky or super crazy going from this, Switch generation to the next. So I would say I would kind of push back and be like, there's not really too much in terms of huge changes that we should expect outside of the increased graphic capability and fidelity and all that stuff. And then hopefully better controller, and then just all those things, and the obviously hopefully there is backwards compatibility, but just outside of these things, it's really not going to be anything super significant or super different from what it was before. But again, I get it, you want it to be a surprise and everything, but I'm someone, I am patient. I am pretty patient for the most part. I think that it is sort of I did note this earlier in the week, and I think in previous weeks, that I am generally someone who is patient and that can wait, and but I think being a part of this cycle, being a part of kind of the crowd, has sort of it's kind of pushed me in the direction of someone who is a bit becoming more impatient with it, and I think it's kind of funny. It's just funny, like it's just like, so what? Just wait a little bit longer, right? You've already waited this long, and I mean, I haven't really waited that long. Really, if I think about it, it's really not that, it's been that bad. And also, I have no, I don't really anticipate getting it on launch. So it's like, what am I really even worried about? It's going to be another system. It's going to come out. They've already confirmed that it's going to be coming out. It's just a matter of actually seeing it. But it just would be nice to see it. It would just be nice to actually get like a confirmation and a reveal and that kind of thing. And I do kind of fall into the camp of really just wanting to kind of get it off of our plates so we can all just stop thinking about it. But there's also some fun in that as well. There's also some kind of fun and continue to speculate and that kind of thing. But if there is like kind of a point in trying to kind of get ahead of the leaks, you know what I mean? If this, and considering that this recent leak from earlier this week seemed to be, pretty legitimate, just and it kind of, again, falls in line with what people have already said, it might be better to just kind of get ahead of that and just to kind of like move on from this point, put out an announcement. But my thinking is, I think that on top of trying to figure out or working on, creating like an announcement for the new system. Also, working into that, the software for like the launch titles for the game, because that's going to be the biggest thing, really. Of course, the system itself has got to be, somewhat impressive. It's got to be a pretty decent improvement from what it currently is, but also we got to see like what the launch games are. I'm expecting Mario Kart. I'm expecting probably Mario, Metroid 4, of course, and maybe some other kind of remastered stuff from the last generation. Maybe games that the Switch didn't previously have, like Elden Ring or Red Dead Redemption 2, those kinds of things. Kind of some of the bigger, PS4-ish generation of games, going into PS5, obviously. Kind of the bigger ones, maybe some of the Square Enix exclusives with Final Fantasy. I think that would be pretty cool to see. I don't know how well optimized that would be for even the newest Switch system, but I mean, that would kind of incentivize me to pick up those games, and I would definitely be interested in getting Final Fantasy and that kind of thing. It has been interesting too, speaking of Final Fantasy, seeing there has been some reports and some discussions with Tetsuya Nomura, who is the director of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and just the Final Fantasy remake series in general. There's been that he had kind of like an interview talking about his vision of the series and what he kind of wanted to do with it, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I think a lot of people had some qualms with it and some issues with it. I guess we'll just kind of get into it. That's kind of all I have to say about the Switch 2 anyway. There was this other leak that did show up, a quote-unquote leak about a YouTube video, but it seemed pretty fake. That happened yesterday, and it was kind of funny. People trying to figure out if this person just kind of made like somewhat of a elaborate prank to convince people that a release was being done on October 20th, which was like, okay, that seems like kind of a random date, but I'm not entirely sure. Or I think it might have been the announcement of the original Switch, but that seems a little too coincidental. and the screenshot that person posted, it just was not. It seemed very fake, but it was pretty funny to see that. It got people kind of just all riled up for no reason. Anyways, Final Fantasy, let's talk about that a little bit. That interview kind of came out, I think it was either yesterday or like, a couple days ago. And as I've said before, I've only played the original Final Fantasy VII last year. And so I have not played any of the other supplemental games. I have not played Crisis Core. I have not played, what are the other ones? Was it Cerberus? Something Cerberus? I have not played that. I've only played the original. Well, I've played Final Fantasy VII. And I am interested in playing through the remakes as well. I mean, they seem like really good games. It is just kind of interesting seeing the conversation online about the kind of the vision and the direction of the games, the fact that it doesn't really follow the original to a T. It kind of incorporates the other games into it as well, the other side content from the games. It includes like Zack's story a little bit more into the remake series and makes him more kind of like a central character and stuff, from my understanding. And that seems to kind of be a bit of there seems to be a bit of a division there. It is kind of funny just sort of following that up from the conversation I had last week about Zelda, and how sort of the certain players kind of want a bit more of a focus in terms of the linear aspects of the game, the storytelling to be a bit more consistent and a bit more fleshed out, or rather just more tied in to the rest of the story, and have it just be a bit more, just, I don't know, better connected in a sense, right? And how there are examples within the other 3D games and Zelda and older Zelda games in general that show that you can have a more you can have a stronger story without having to sacrifice gameplay or whatever. You know what I mean? There can be some sort of balance found, and that you can try to make it work. So that was kind of like a conversation I was having, and it just the general kind of, not general, but certain, consensus or certain criticisms about the game from parts of the Zelda, fan base. And you can kind of see a similar thing. It's a little different, obviously, because you're dealing with a completely different vision and completely different series. But you can kind of see a similar thread with Final Fantasy and what the direction is going. I think with Final Fantasy, you are going in a completely different direction than what the original vision of the series was. With Zelda, there's still kind of that essence of exploration and adventure and that kind of thing. You can clearly, I know a lot of people are saying that this is not a Zelda game, this is like a sandbox game, and I disagree with that. I think there is clearly like a Zelda identity with the series, even despite some of the dramatic departures with Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. But I think with Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy like the remake series, and Final Fantasy 16, it is a little difficult outside of some recognizable characters and names and that kind of thing. It's a little difficult to see the connection between that and the older titles in the series, to the point where it doesn't really feel like Final Fantasy anymore. I keep seeing kind of this word or this phrase, identity crisis, being thrown around about Final Fantasy, which I think is sort of interesting. Just the fact that we don't know, and again, it's really hard for me to comment on these things because I haven't played through any of like the newer entries. But I'm giving kind of just like a very surface level view of what it kind of looks like to me, who is like a big fan, but also has not engaged with the newer material. It seems to me that the fans, older fans in particular, certain older fans don't really think that this falls under the category, or rather the moniker, of Final Fantasy anymore. It no longer feels that way. I think especially in the case of Final Fantasy 16. The action combat, the kind of the lack of RPG elements, the fact that there's like a really not a whole lot in terms of like party members and customization and all of these things, all of the RPG elements that are more present in other games and other series don't really seem to be kind of apparent and really shown off in the case of 16. And I think a lot of people look at that and feel that it is a kind of it's a little puzzling. It's not exactly it's not really reassuring, you know what I mean? I think that the series is not what it is anymore, and I think that's okay. I understand where people are coming from, though, when they sort of want something that is akin to, games of the past, from, Final Fantasy 1 through 10 at least. And just that kind of departure from that is kind of is it sounds like it's really disappointing to a lot of players. And I think that is it's interesting to look at. And it does kind of, it's like you see that and you want to try to, because as a fan, if there is something that you hold really close to you, you have really good memories of it, and in some ways you are kind of trying to find a way to recapture that in another game, that was, that does fall under the series name, but just doesn't have any of the distinguishing features that the past ones did. And you're trying to kind of recapture it and re-experience it. And it's hard to do that. I think it is almost impossible to do that, other than to just replay those original games again, because those experiences are kind of tied to that time and tied to that specific to that specific game. And I think that it is really hard to try to recreate those things. I think that there seems to be something missing with kind of these newer games, and that's something that I can't exactly explain because I haven't played them, but that is kind of the sense that I'm getting. Obviously, I pointed out specifics of, like, game mechanics, modes, whatever. Maybe some, just the storytelling and stuff is maybe a bit lacking. It might be a culmination of a lot of these things that kind of give the sense that there's something of substance that is missing with these newer titles. And I think it might be a little difficult for some people to pinpoint that. I feel that I am just not... I feel that I would need to play the games myself to really give my full thoughts, because I do want to play them, and I think part of me will enjoy these games. But I think that I do kind of want to be a part of that conversation, to really sort of get a sense of where this series is going. Earlier I played through Final Fantasy X, and while there are some elements of it in terms of kind of the exploration, maybe the lack of like a world map, those kinds of things, maybe the sheer sort of linearity of the game could pose a bit of some issues. And I do think that it is some valid criticism. I think it sort of restricts the player from being able to do a bit more on their end to explore the environments and that kind of stuff, and see other things outside of kind of the predetermined path. But you could definitely feel there's this, there's still like an essence with that game. There's still a lot of love and heart put into it. And I am curious to see if that kind of feeling is reflected in the newer titles. And if that maybe that whatever that core thing that is missing is something that I can actually put words to. Because right now I just cannot, I can't really figure it out. Like I know it's like I see, people talking about these issues and whatnot, and it's like these are really great games, like there's a lot of really great things that come with it, but there's just something. What is it missing? Is it like the heart of things? Like what are we talking about? This isn't to downplay the developers and creators' vision and that kind of thing. But it just doesn't feel the same for those people. That's kind of what I'm getting at, right? Myself personally, I really don't know. This is, again, surface level observations of the series from someone who has played, some of the games. So I really, maybe it is a little difficult for me to comment on that. And again, I think I just would need to experience those games myself to really get a handle of it. I still want to play through. I still have, the older games kind of in my library or backlog, if you want to call it that. I still want to play through Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy 12, maybe some of the older games as well. But I think I do want to kind of play through those older titles, and then maybe eventually get to the newer ones with 7, 16, even 15. I haven't played 15 either. So those are kind of thing. Those are kinds of things to look at, and it's just sort of, it's like coming from both like an outsider's perspective on someone who hasn't engaged with the newer titles because they don't have a PlayStation 5, and our PlayStation system in general. And it's just a little hard for me to justify getting it just to play those games, and I know I've already talked to death about that. But I think I will get to them sometime later in the future, and I will finally be able to kind of contribute to that conversation, because I would like to. The Final Fantasy, it's I think it is one of my favorite series, despite me only completing 4 of the games. Right? Is it 4? How many have I played? I've played 6, 7, and 9, 10, 4. Yeah, I've played 4 of them. So it's I think that while I haven't played all of the games yet, I can still consider myself to be, a big fan of the series, and still consider it to be one of my favorite series, despite me not going through the entirety of it. And I would like to just kind of be a part of that conversation, because I think that it's worth examining, and I would like to kind of think about that critically as to why there seems to be kind of this dissonance, in a similar way to why there was kind of a dissonance when Tears of the Kingdom came out. And I think it's interesting to kind of look at, despite maybe the overwhelming positivity and, positive reception that all of these games, Tears of the Kingdom, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy 16, despite that, there is like a kind of an undercurrent. There is like a decent amount of people who hold pretty strong criticisms of those games, and I kind of like to field them. I really don't think it is coming from a place of malice or anything like that. These are like genuine fans who just have like some things that come to mind, and just sort of want to voice it. I think it's useful to provide criticisms for things, and I think it's useful to kind of think about why maybe certain games don't hit, certain games don't kind of work for you in the same way that others do. Kind of continue. I sort of gave a little bit of a little teaser earlier this week, wanting to talk about Outer Wilds. Speaking of kind of games that have sort of like an overwhelmingly positive reception of it, I sort of fall on the side of being a little disappointed with the game, and I want to talk about it, because I think this is a good game. I think in some aspects it is a great game. Just the interconnectedness of everything in Outer Wilds is incredible. Just the way that they made this game. It is like kind of like a technical marvel how this game was made, and just the way in which just things are connected, and the way you can sort of travel in between places, and how you figure it out, and how you kind of discover this mystery, and all of these things I think is really fascinating, and I think it's really cool. It might just be the fact that I am not the most patient person when it comes to these kinds of things. Let's just start off with talking about, just general kind of maybe issues that I've sort of ran into. And this might just be due to maybe the way that I play and also the fact that I am playing on a Switch, so maybe lower fidelity and lower performance maybe kind of lend itself to that a little bit. But I think the fact that the controls are so kind of wonky and difficult to use, and I understand that getting better at that is part of the process and part of the game as well. But despite me already putting in like at least 20 hours into the game, I still find myself struggling to make it work and make it comfortable. I could finagle with the control scheme and whatnot, but it just doesn't really work for me. And I found that it sort of has taken away some enjoyment of the game for me to have to kind of try to like work around figuring out how to kind of work with the controls and that kind of thing. And I'm really usually not someone who, cares about too much of that. I mean, also the fact that I do tend to play games where control isn't like the most important thing, especially with like, RPGs and that kind of thing. So maybe that aspect might be a reflection of my own kind of personal tastes, right? I'm just not someone who is like into super action heavy games. But that did kind of like dissuade me for a little bit. This past week or a couple of weeks or so, I've been really trying to kind of get back into the game because I do want to see it to the end. And in some ways I've made progress little by little by little. But I just, a real part of me just wants to kind of get to the end of it. And it kind of sucks because I really do want to enjoy what this game has to offer. But in order to get to that point, you kind of have to go through similar processes. You have to kind of go through you have to make similar actions in order to get to a certain point. If you ever play the game, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And it's all a part of the way the game is created. And I understand that. I just struggled with that a little bit. I found it is really satisfying when you do figure out something and you're like, I get it. That's cool. I kind of solved that on my own, and it's satisfying, and I finally got to that point and I got it. I just wish it didn't take me this long to get there. You know what I mean? I think the kind of the puzzle solving aspect of it is hindered by both the not so great control scheme, and then also the fact that you are kind of limited in terms of the amount of time that you're given, and the fact that there is not really, outside of essentially attempting to kind of doing the same thing again from the very beginning, you have to kind of you have to sort of like plan it out and then try your best to do it. And if you don't get to it, it is kind of like this time sink, and you're like, dang, that's a little frustrating, right? And that just comes with like any game, really. Like I like playing like roguelikes, and I enjoy doing the same kind of repetitious action over and over again. So it's like, if I like that, why wouldn't I enjoy this? I think with this, it's like I know what the solution is, and I know how to get to it. It's just that like, something like like a little slight mistake. Maybe I like flew too close to like one side of the cavern that I'm like exploring, and I fell off and I died. Or maybe I just was like, I don't know, there's like a slight little mistake and I have to restart all over again. And I know, and I'm sure players can be like, you can actually speed up the time in some instances. Sure. And you can, maybe figure out where exactly, the place you want to go to is going to be at a certain point in the universe, and you can kind of get to that point if you skip ahead a little bit. And I understand You know, I understand there are ways to kind of go about it. I'm just not that patient, and I think that I'm seeing what, I think it's like I should technically be done with this game now. Like I'm kind of looking at what the play times of most people are. It's like 15 hours or so, and I spent at least like 20 plus hours in it, which is fine. There's no problem with, spending more time and trying to figure things out. But there's like a feeling of me that I'm like I feel like I should be seeing the ending now. And it's like I know what it is that I have to do, but I'm just like struggling to get to that point. I'm struggling to like time it exactly the way that I want it to. I sort of have an understanding of what the world and structure is like, and the history of the race that came before you, and the connection that exists there, and kind of the I understand kind of the emotional aspect of it too, and the existence of this race of people, and what they were kind of able to accomplish, and what they kind of left behind, and the culture, and the people that were kind of involved, and how that sort of led to where things currently are with your character, and your race, and that sort of thing. And I understand all of those things, and I understand why why players connect to all of those. I just want to get to the end, and that's kind of frustrating. I just it's like there are so many moments, like I mentioned, that do give me really genuine satisfaction in terms of kind of the puzzle solving and all of these things. But it's like I can see what the vision is, and I understand kind of what it's sort of, what the game is telling me in terms of the story. I just want to kind of close this book. I want to close this story, and reach the ending, but I also don't want to just, I think it would be a kind of it would be very dissatisfying if I didn't try to get to that point myself without looking up guides or whatever, you know what I mean? But I also am ready to kind of close the chapter on Outer Wilds. I'm ready to kind of finish it, but I'm just struggling with it. And maybe that's just part of the process. Maybe that is just the design and the intention of the game. The fact that you can kind of do things over and over again until you figure it out. And I think maybe for some people that can be really, that's you can get some enjoyment out of that. And I myself have found some really cool moments with that, but it just is not enough for me to really be like, I just want to kind of devote myself to this game. And it's a little hard for me to even really, I don't know, recommend this game as well, because I think it really is for kind of a niche, for people that really, I don't know, it just is, it's a very unique game, and I think it's really cool. And I think that there's a lot of really, really cool aspects of it, but I think just the gameplay kind of, literal loop of it started to really kind of wear thin on me a little bit. And I wish that I could, I could give more to this game. I do think that I will kind of continue to try to reach the ending and try to kind of work through it. And again, I really do want to say that I think that this game could be like an incredible experience for some people. Maybe you've never played a game like this before, and maybe this is just it's just such like a departure from anything else that you've played, that it kind of gives you a different perspective on what other games could look like, and maybe that sort of invites you to try out some other games. But myself, it's sort of, for myself, I think that it just, the limitations of it, I think, do lend itself to to you being able to solve these problems and, get to a certain point and trying to figure out this kind of, large overarching mystery. But it just felt a little, I don't know, the frustration that I've had with it, unfortunately, kind of, you know, butted heads with the experiences that I've had with this game. You know what I mean? And this is the thing. I think that with certain games, whether it's like, kind of like the indie darlings and that kind of thing, and most games I really do enjoy and stuff. I think this is like the first time, because I'm really trying to think like what games I can really think of as like sort of disappointing, and I think this is kind of the first game that I've stumbled across where, if I do think critically about it and I want to put, kind of my words to it, where I can kind of say this has been a bit disappointing for me, which sucks, because I really do, I went into it with kind of high expectations, and I again, I think I understand where people are coming from and why people love it so much. I do want to kind of get, some more, what is it? I want to hear people's thoughts on what made this game click for them, and that sort of thing. I do want to finish it though. That's just like the frustrating thing. It's just like, I just want to get to the end. I want to see it, but I want to do it myself. But I just don't know how much of a patience I have in terms of, maneuvering the ship and just like, sleeping to a certain point in time so you can get to the location that you want from the distance point that you need. It's a lot of these factors, and maybe my brain is just not wired to that kind of thing. And so I will see, as I said kind of earlier this week, I do want to try to get to the end, and I'll try my best. To try to get to that point. If I don't, it might just be one of those things where I just don't finish this game. It really might. I already kind of, have an idea of what sort of the ending and kind of what the mystery is going to be, but I think it might be one of those things, instead of trying to slog forward with trying to figure out, how to maneuver things and how to maneuver my character and my ship and just sort of like force my way to the ending. It just might be one of those things where I just don't finish this game. And that's okay. I've talked about this, before, where, there are certain games where I'll stop playing and I'll like come back to, and maybe this is one of those instances that I do come back to much later on. But yeah, I think that it is kind of funny thinking about, my initial sort of reaction to the game, because I think my initial, it is really, you can kind of do another Tears of the Kingdom comparison, where the initial reaction was, very positive, overwhelmingly positive, and as time went along, the cracks started to kind of come out, and more criticism started to emerge and be a bit more vocal, and that's kind of my feeling with this game. It's just like the initial part of it was pretty positive, but as time went along, I felt like I was just kind of, sort of stuck in this like little loop, and I was just like, okay, I think maybe I just need to step away from this game longer than I thought I did, because I did take, a pretty significant break from this game, in the hopes that maybe when I do come back to it, I can kind of try to figure out things again. But I ran into kind of the similar frustrations that I did have when I did initially stop playing. So, yeah, it just might be one of those things where I just shelve it and I come back to it later, or I just don't finish it, and I just kind of move on. And yeah, part of me, I think, is just kind of ready to move on to whatever there is out there next. Unicorn Overlord, I still have on my docket. I think that I think that I'll probably try to finish it pretty soon, in preparation for Echoes of Wisdom. and I think that I might try to finish it this next week. Because Tears of the Kingdom, Echoes of Wisdom is coming out next Thursday or next Friday, I think. And that is gonna probably take up most of my time. I don't want to rush the game, obviously. I don't want to rush Echoes, but I do intend on, focusing my full, having my full focus on that game. So, I'm like pretty much right at the end of Unicorn. So I think that I could probably get that, close that chapter as well. And, that game has been really great. That game I've really, thoroughly enjoyed. And I'm excited to kind of get, finish that game in a good way. I'm looking forward to finishing it. Excuse me. I don't know what the heck happened there. Swallowed like a frog or something. Excuse me. Anyways, those are kind of my, I gave kind of my extended thoughts on Outer Wilds. Thinking about, just kind of what's next and what's coming up next. Some Switch 2 stuff came out. Hopefully more Switch 2 things, developments are kind of going to be made in the next week or so I can talk about that. But yeah, I think I'm going to leave it off at that for today and this week's episode. But yeah, that's going to do it. Thank you for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.